Well, it's springtime now, and for a lot of anglers, that's time to start getting the gear ready and getting back out on the bank. And one of the jobs you might want to be doing at this time of year is respooling your reels with fresh line for the season ahead. I've worked a lot of shows this winter, and it's apparent that there's so many different lines out there that it can create a little bit of confusion. So I'm going to run you through Gardner's range of carp fishing main lines, look at some of the qualities of each different line and the benefits, and talk about some of the situations that you might want to use them in. And then I'll show you how I go about respooling my reels. Kicking off with the mono main lines, Gardner's most affordable one is the ProBlend. Now there's ProBlend Light and ProBlend Dark, which suit different lake beds. I describe it as a good general purpose all-round carp fishing line, and it's got a lovely balance of abrasion resistance, sink rate and limpness. Where it really does excel is with its shock absorbance, which makes it really good for level line casting. That's casting without a leader, so you might want to be fishing long range with a big lead, but you might not be allowed to use a leader, and that's probably our best line for that purpose. One other reason where you might want to choose the ProBlend is for a one-off trip, say for a trip to France where you might be fishing for bigger fish and you need to step up the diameter and break in strain of your main line. Being pocket friendly, ideal for that. Moving up to the next line, we've got the Hydra Tough. Now this is an out and out snag fishing line. When you're fishing situations where you're up against it with heavy weed, like savage gravel bars, any sort of obstructions like that, snags, this is the one. It's absolutely bulletproof. A lot of the guys use it in the Belgian canals on the continent when they're fishing really tough places that put your tackle under a lot of strain. Hydra Tough's the one. It sinks nicely, behaves well on the spool, but its main thing is that it's tough. Moving on up the scale, we come to my personal favourite and the line that I use for nearly all my fishing, and that's the GT8 Plus. Again, it's a line that's available in two colours to suit different water qualities and different lake beds. There's this green one and there's a clear version. Now it's got all the abrasion resistance qualities of the Hydra Tough. However, that's coupled with a couple of other qualities that I really like in the main line. It's very soft and supple, making it nice and easy to cast. It's a very good casting line, in fact. It sits nicely on the spool and it sinks incredibly well. Again, I'd describe this as a general all-purpose line, but one that is up to the toughest situations. The last mono that I've got to show you is the GTHD. Now this is the most popular line in Gardner's range. It might not have the abrasion resistance of the Hydra Tough and the GT80, but it is the fastest sinking mono that we do. It's also the limpest and best behaved on the spool. Its main quality is an excellent strength to diameter ratio, which makes it the perfect long range casting line. It's also, in the manufacturing process, it's partially pre-stretched, which means there's not much stretch left in it, so you get a much better feel, which makes it perfect for feeding leads down at long range. HD is also available as a double tapered main line, which negates the need for tying leaders for those of you that are hitting huge ranges with big leads. Although we've covered monofilament main lines, there is one more to talk about, and that's the HD floater. As its name suggests, it is designed purposely for surface fishing. It's got an excellent strength to diameter ratio, which means I can use a very thin line, which is less likely to spook wary surface carp. And its main quality is that the line itself actually floats. It's got like a hollow core through it, so it actually sits on the surface, which makes it really easy to control my controller float and get it just moving through the swim at the same pace as the mixers. Lines that sink have to be treated with line floatants, but this just doesn't need any at all, so that's what I really like about the HD floater. Again, it's another one that's available in two colours. It's a clear and a nice subtle green. For those of you that consider stealth and line concealment important aspects in the fishing, you might want to consider using a fluorocarbon mainline. I've got two here. We've got Mirage and our premium Tiger line, which has built up a superb reputation over many years. Fluorocarbon is much heavier than water, so it sinks far better than any monofilament line, enabling you to get your lines right down and sunk. It's also got a similar refractive index, which makes it much less visible when it's underwater. Now, one of the downsides of fluorocarbon is that it's more wiry and stiffer than a mono line, so it's not ideal for long range fishing. It makes very, very good short range line. But for those of you that do want to use its qualities, it's perfect to use as a leader, so you can use a mono main line and then use a fluorocarbon leader on the end, let's say the last 20 feet or so. For many anglers, the choice of main line will include braids. Braids got many advantages over mono, which are applicable to certain situations. One of those will be the zero or virtually zero stretch that braid has. Not only does this enable you to gain control over fish very quickly, it's ideal for snag fishing where there's no give in the line, enabling fish to get closer into the sanctuary. It also makes for good casting, and primarily gives you good feel and feedback to your rod tip, so you can feel a lead down well, and you can also feel gravel on the bottom and silt, etc. Choosing a braided main line is a lot more complicated than it sounds, and certain braids will suit certain fishing situations, so it's very important to put a little bit of thought into what braid you choose according to your type of angling. Prime example of that, sinking braids. To achieve a sinking braid, heavier elements are inserted within the weave of the braid, but the downside of this is that they do increase the diameter. So if you're choosing your braided main line for extreme range fishing, which many people do, it's important not to choose a sinking braid, and you want to choose a floating or neutrally buoyant braid, such as the kinetic or the kinetic distance. Should you be fishing sort of short to medium range, then you can utilise the qualities of a sinking braid. Now, being very supple and heavy, the sinking braids will hug the bottom, follow the contours of the lake bed. Now, we sell two sinking braids. There's HydroSync, which is a fairly fast sinking braid, and we've got the extremely fast sinking HydroSync Noir, which has got more of the heavier elements woven within it. Now, all of the Gardner braids come in a subtle dark green colour, except for the HydroSync Noir, which, as the name suggests, is jet black. When it comes to spooling up a reel from scratch, these are the things you'll need. Any rod butt section, don't need the whole rod, just the butt. Obviously your reel, a pair of scissors, some form of towel, your line, and a bucket with some water in there. Right, so take the end of the new spooler line and go through the butt ring the opposite way to how I normally would if I was fishing, back down towards the reel. It's important to make sure the bail arm is open before tying the knot. Now, I will normally do 2 turns of the line around, and my knot of choice would be a 4 or 5 turn grinner. But you're unlikely ever to get down to this knot, so it's not so important. What is important is that once you've tied it, that you move it right to the back of the spool, so that the bulk of the knot doesn't interfere with the line lay one little bit. Now, I like to put the spool in a bucket of water so that it can spin freely, and the water just helps it to lay on the reel nicely. Some people like to soak it. I've never found any great benefit in soaking it, but having it wet certainly helps when you're reeling in, stops you burning your hands. Now, when this goes into the water in the bucket, it's important that it can't turn around, because I want that spool spinning so that the line comes off exactly the same way it went on at the manufacturer's. You can use a smaller bucket if you've got one that's small enough, small container, or another easy way to stop the spool spinning is just to put a stick through the centre. I've pierced the labels there, and you just put a stick through the centre like that, and then it can't turn around in the bucket at all. So now we're all attached, I need to close my bail arm, and then I'm going to wind in through a towel or cloth. It goes in my hand there, which I can then hold against the butt of the rod, and that stops me burning my fingers if I wind a little bit too fast, and enables me to put a decent bit of tension on the line. Now the spool's getting close to being full, I need to slow down so I can keep an eye on where it is so I know when to stop. The amount I'd put on the reel would slightly depend on what line I'm using and what I'm going to use it for. I would tend to fill up to maybe a millimetre below the lip of the spool, something like that. If I were putting braid on the reel though, I would go probably 2 or 3 mil less, because if you overfill a spool with braid, then you're just going to have constant bird's nests. I've just showed you how I would go about spooling up a reel that was completely empty. Now, unless you're fishing at extreme ranges, maybe boating baits out, in which case you will need a whole spool of line. But for most angler situations, I would say something like 250 or so yards of line is adequate. That will enable you to spool up 3 reels from 1 bulk spool. Now, it's not that easy to judge how far 250 yards is when you're taking your old line off. So what I would do for that situation is just to tie the line off to a wrapping stick and then wrap it off. I think it's 62.5 wraps, 250 yards. So 60, 65 wraps, something like that. Take that much off and then put your fresh line on. When you're tying your knot on, I would use probably a back-to-back grinner, but again, make sure it's at the back of the spool where it won't interfere with any casting. One final point on respooling your reels. Any old line that you take off your reel, please don't just chuck it in the bin. Take it to your local tackle shop if they're a member of the line recycling scheme and get it recycled properly.